Hey everyone, what's up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Nun Vav of Masechta Ayruvin, Daf 56. Boy, I hope you guys got your thinking caps. At the beginning we start off with some pretty easy, like Agadata, but then we talk about determining north, south, east, and west. Okay. Then we talk about some astrology from Shmuel. And then we talk about squares around circular cities. I hope you all got your thinking caps. But just keep in mind, I learned this daf during the break on Yom Kippur afternoon. When everybody went to sleep, I was stuck there trying to figure this stuff out. So don't worry, I'm prepared. I know it. But I think, I don't know, why am I saying that? I guess you'll see soon why you can appreciate that this was not the Gemara I would have hoped for Yom Kippur. Anyways. So we are on Daf Nun Hey Amud Beis, 3 lines from the bottom. Amar Rav Huna said Rav Huna, Kol Ir she'ein bo yerek, ein Talmid Chacham rasha lader bo. Very nice. So any city that doesn't have vegetables accessible, so Talmid Chacham can't live there because vegetables are healthy, they're cheap. So the Talmid Chacham could just afford to buy some vegetables, have some food to eat, and carry on with his learning. The name of the Yerek Malia. Wait, so is that implying that vegetables are good? But we learn in a brayso. There are 3 things that increase the excrement. And they make you slouch over, bent over. And they take away 1/500th of a person's eyesight. And these are them: pas kibar, whole wheat bread, v'sheichar, chadash, and new beer, v'yerek, and vegetables. Alright, I guess vegetables aren't so good for you. It's so funny, we saw a Gemara in Masechta Brachos that said that if you run, you'll lose 1/600th of your eyesight, and then it comes back with Havdalah or something. But it's so funny, all these things that we assume are healthy, such as eating vegetables and whole wheat bread, and, vegetables I guess healthier than whole wheat bread, and exercising and running, these are all things that I guess will make you go blind. Alright, well. Lo kasha, the Gemara says no problem. Ha besume v'charte, ha b'shar yarke. Okay. So it depends if we're talking about garlic and leeks, or if we're talking about other vegetables. Garlic and leeks are very good for you, and therefore the city needs to have garlics and leeks. But other vegetables are not good for you, and they make you lose 1/500th of your eyesight. Keditanya, as we learn in the Brayso, shum yerek, that garlic is a vegetable, i.e. garlic is good for you. Krishin chatzi yerek, whereas leeks are only half a vegetable. They're only 50% good for you. Nira tznon, nira samchaim. If you see radish, that is mamish, an elixir of life. V'atanya nira tznon, nira samamavis. But 1 second, I thought that if you see radish, you've seen an elixir of death. Lokasha, no problem. Kan ba'alin, kan ba'amohos. Oh, so if it's the leaves, well then you better run. But if it's the bulbs of the radish, well that's lemaisa very good for you. Kan bi mosachama, kan bi mosageshamim. It also depends if it's in the summer when a radish is very refreshing, or if it's in the winter when, I guess it's not refreshing and not good for you. Alright, well, there you go, Chaver, eat your vegetables. Amar Yehuda Amarav, says of Yehuda in the name of Rav, Kol Ir sheyeshba milos umordos. Any city that has steep hills that you go up and you go down, you gotta, mom, struggle. San Francisco. Wow. So the people and the animals that live there, they die at half of their life. Wait, why would they die at half their life? No, they don't die, but they age quickly, because it's a lot of work to carry, to be schlepping up and down. Amr Rav Huna Breda of Yoshua, says Rav Huna Breda of Yoshua, Hani mul yisad devei beri udvei narash az kanun, that all these steep inclines on the roads between Beiri and Narash, they have made me old. And it's very interesting to me about this is that I read somewhere, I think on Wikipedia, that Rav Papa was the Rosh Yeshiva in a place called Narish. Now, Rav Huna Breda of Yoshua was Rav Papa's sidekick. So, and I've never really seen Narish in the Gemara before. But here we see Narish, and we see Dafka that Rav Huna Breda of Yoshua was there. And he was connected to Rav Papa, so it makes sense that Rav Papa was in this place called Narish. But I don't know, I never really hear too much about it. You hear about Pumbedisa and Mechosa and Narda. Alright, Narish. Alright. Chevra, You ready? You ready? Here's where this taf takes a 90-degree turn. Or is it 180? I don't know. Steep turn. Here we go. Tana Rabbanon. The rabbis taught Bo Lirabba. Okay, so let's say you have a city. Now the city is not square. The city is, let's say, circular. Okay, and you want to put a square around it, so we could start measuring the city and the tchum and all that stuff. So when you create that square, so that square should be directly due north, south, east, and west. It should be in line with the actual directions of the earth. So Meraba Beribua Olam. So you make it square with the directions of the earth. No saint Tzfon Litzfon Olam. You make the north side of the square to the north of the world. Udrom Lidrom Olam. The southern side to the south of the world. V'simonich. And if you want signs to help you remember, so Egla B'tzafon V'akrav B'darum. So the constellations are that you have the, I believe, Taurus in the north and the Scorpion. Is that like Scorpio or something? In the south. So basically, if you know how to kind of tell the stars and see where the Taurus is and where the Scorpion is, well then you're gonna make the city with the northern part where, you know, in the direction of the Taurus, and the southern part of the square in the direction of the Scorpion. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Emeno Yodeh L'Rabba B'Ribua Shel Olam. Now Rabbi Yossi suggests that, well, if you're not familiar with the constellations, I'll give you a suggestion, but don't worry. I suspect that most of us won't really be helped by this suggestion either, but Meraba Kamin Hatkufa. Okay. So basically, if you don't know about Taurus and Scorpio, what you can do is you can construct your square based on the way that the sun rises and sets. Okay. So who could tell me where the sun rises? Because I don't know. Okay, the sun rises in the east and it sets in the west. Okay. But here's the thing. So I guess the best way to imagine this is just if you think about a square. Okay. Think about a square and the top of it is north, the bottom of it is south, and the right of it is east, and the left of it is west. Okay. So the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, but it doesn't always like rise smack in the middle of the east and set smack in the middle of the west. It kind of moves up and down the east and west. So basically, so the way that Rabbi Yossi is assuming, at least as described by Rashi, is that, well, you have what's called the summer solstice and the winter solstice, and you have the spring and fall equinoxes. And what these things are is that the summer solstice, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what I understand from the art scroll, is that the summer solstice is the longest day of the year, and the winter solstice is the shortest day of the year, and the equinoxes are when the days are 50-50. And basically what happens, basically like 50% day, 50% night. So if you take the summer solstice, which is the longest day of the year, so on that day, the sun is going to rise in the east, but all the way up north, right? So in the northeast corner of this square that we've constructed. Now, on that day also, the sun is going to set on the west, but all the way up north, okay? And also on the winter solstice, on the shortest day of the year, so the sun rises in the east, but all the way at the bottom of our square, so at the southeast of this square, corner of the square, and it sets on the in the west, but at the southwest, so all the way at the bottom left of our square. And then throughout the year, from the summer solstice all the way down to the winter solstice and back up again, it's basically slowly going up and down the east and west sides. So if you know, and you see now, I'm just assuming that most people probably aren't aware of this, but or at least I'm just assuming that because I'm not, and most people aren't, but. If you are aware of this and you're kind of in tune with this, so then on the summer solstice, if you notice where the sun rises and sets, basically it's gonna set along, it's gonna rise and set on the same point, and that is the northern. That's basically the north, right? It rises in the northeast and sets in the northwest on the summer solstice. So basically, that axis that it rises and sets on is basically the north. So if you want to make the square, so make the top of the square, in the direction of where the sun rises and sets on the summer solstice. And the same thing is true on the winter solstice, on the shortest day of the year. Basically, the sun is going to rise at the southeast corner and set at the southwest corner. So basically, if you can kind of put those two on an axis and draw a straight line between them, that'll be the south. So the southern part of the square will be there, in that direction. And then in the spring and fall equinoxes, which is when the days are like 50% day, 50% night, so then the sun will rise halfway between north and south on the east, and then in the west it'll and set basically directly due west. So that will be the east and west sides of your square respectively. Anyways, that's how you could construct a square based on that. So Rabbi Yossi Omer Eno Yodea L'Rabba'a B'Ribuah Shel Olam. If you don't know how to construct a square based on Taurus and Scorpion, well, Mirabba'a, you can make it square Kaminat Tkufa based on the Tkufot, the solstices and equinoxes. Ketzad. So Chama Yotze B'Yom Aruch V'Shokaz B'Yom Aruch Zeu Pnei Tzafin. So the point where the sun rises and sets on the longest day of the year, that is the north. That axis that it rises and sets on is the northern face. Okay. Chama Yotza B'Yom Kotzer V'Shokaz B'Yom Kotzer, where the axis upon which the sun rises and falls and sets on the shortest day of the year, Hu Pnei Darum, that is the southern face. Tkufas Nisan utkufas Tishrei. Now the fall and spring equinoxes, Chama Yotza b'Chatzi Mizrach v'Shokaz b'Chatzi Marav. It rises halfway on the eastern side and then sets directly due west on the western side, halfway between north and south. Shneimar, as the pasuk says, Holech al darum v'sovev el tzafon. That it that it walks, it travels during the day to the south, Visovev el Tzafon, and then at night it goes towards the north. Okay, so Holech el Darum b'yom, Visovev el Tzafon balayla. Okay, so during the day it goes towards the south, and then at night it goes towards the north. So what that means is this, is that basically the sun doesn't just go on a straight axis, right? Kind of like they say that planes, they don't just, like if you're taking a flight from New York to Tel Aviv, it doesn't just fly in a straight line from New York to Tel Aviv. It has to like go in some kind of an arc or something. So the same thing with the sun. The sun doesn't just rise in the east and then just go straight over to the west and set there. It rises in the east, and then the way that Rashi explains it is it basically travels throughout the day down the eastern side and then down the southern side, and then starts setting on the western side. So basically rises, so let's say on the summer solstice thing, where it rises in the northeast, so it'll basically rise in the northeast, traverse the entire eastern face, and then go on the southern face, and then start traversing upward back to where it's going to set in the northwest. It's going to go travel the entire western face thing. Now, if you think about viewing this as like a complete circle, right? Because basically what happens is it rises in the east and then sets and does this whole circle. So it kind of like rises in the east and then goes towards the south and then comes back to the west and sets. Well, then it completes the circle at night, outside of where we could see, on the other side of the world. So, now this kind of assumes that the sun kind of goes around the Earth. We kind of maybe assume that the Earth goes around the sun, but there was a Yid named Einstein who created this. He had this idea called relativity, which says that everything is relative anyway. So I guess to say that, I think part of that theory is to say that the Earth goes around the sun is really just from the perspective of the sun, but from the perspective of the Earth, then the sun goes around the Earth. I think that's in line with relativity, but al kopanim. So what we're saying here is that Holech el darum bayom, so that during the day, basically the sun rises and is arcing towards the south, and then it goes back towards the west to set, but then it completes the circle, Holech el tzafon balayla, that then it goes towards the north to complete the circle, and rise again in the east, so it finishes the circle in the north, and then rises again in the east, in the morning. Sovev holech haruach. So then it says, it goes around and around, the directions, I guess. Elu pnei mizrach ufnei marav. These are the faces of the east and the faces of the west. Shepa'amim malachtan ufa'amim misabevason. That so mehalech is during the day, and sovev is at night. That's the assumption. So therefore, sometimes it's going on the eastern and western faces during the day, and sometimes it's going on the eastern and western faces during the night. What does that mean? So during the summer solstice, where the sun rises in the northeast and sets in the northwest, well then basically it is traveling on the entire east and west sides during the daylight hours. It's basically rising in the northeast, and then it's traversing the entire eastern side towards the south, and then it at halfway during the day, I guess, it starts going towards the west, where it's going to set in the northwest and traverses the entire western side. So during the summer, it traverses the east and west during the day, and then it sets, and the summer solstice, it sets in the northwestern corner, which means when it completes its circle in the north at night, it's not actually traversing the east or west at all. But sometimes it does this entire east-west thing at night, which is basically in the winter when the sun rises in the southeastern part of our square, and then is still going south because the sun always goes south, so it's basically outside of the square, and then sets in the southwestern part of our square, which means it didn't actually travel in the east or west part of the square at all during the day. And then basically once it sets, which is on the shortest day of the year, it then spends the entire night continuing on the west, doing the entire west side, and then the north, and then going down the entire east, where it's going to rise again on the southeast point, corner the next morning, the day after the winter solstice. Yom Kippur, break. Yeah. Amar of Misharsha, says of Misharsha, lesnu lahani klali. So Misharsha says, all of these klalos, not klalos, klalot, klalot and klalot, with a chaf, rules. So, says of Misharsha, these rules, so, bogus. Titania, as we learn in the Brisa, lo yatsa chama me'olam me'keren mizrachis tzfonis v'shaka be'keren mizrachis tzfonis. Rabbi Misharsha says, bogus. The sun never rises in the northeast corner of our square and sets in the northwest corner of our square. And it never goes out at the south, it never rises in the southeast and sets in the southwest. Meaning, what he's saying is this idea that on the summer solstice, the sun rises all the way to the northeast and sets all the way to the northwest. No, it's never like that. It never quite hits the north, and it never quite hits the south. It's always going to be, somewhere in the east and somewhere in the west, but it's never going to get quite all the way up to the northeast and northwest. So therefore, you can't just assume that on the summer solstice, that's like the north or something. Okay. Alright, you guys ready to move on? You sure? I guess we don't have much of a choice. Alright, Chevra. Well, now, to understand the next part of this Gemara, so remember on Daf Nun Zayin of Masechta Brachos, Daf Nun Zayin of Beis, Shmuel said, "Nihirli shvile shmaya k'shvile dinarda." So Shmuel said that it is as clear to him the roads of the heavens like the roads of his city of Narda. So I guess he was kind of an astrologer. We also saw him hanging out with also the astrologer in Masechta Shabbos. What was his name? I don't know. I can't remember. I don't know. What do you want me to tell you? I can't remember. Ooh, I have Masechta Shabbos here. Should I go look it up? Alright, I'll go look it up. 1 second. Avlate. That was his name. Avlate. Yeah. I just looked it up in my Masechta Shabbos that I learned in 12th grade. Yeah, Masechta Shabbos. We learned it in 12th grade. Anyways, I don't know if I learned it that good, but we learned it. Hakuponim. Avlate. Right, so you would hang out with that guy, Avlate. So Shmuel, in addition to being a doctor, he was also an astrologer. Anyways, so what Shmuel says is that that the year is 365 days and 6 hours. Okay, 365 days and 6 hours. Okay, cool. Now, if the year is 365 days and 6 hours, well then the 4 seasons are each 91 days and 7.5 hours, right? Because 91 times 4 would be 364. So now we have another 24 hours plus another 6 to reckon with. So 24 and 6 is 30. 30 divided by 4 is 7.5. So each tkufa, each season, is 91 and 7.5 hours, right? 91 times 4 being 364, and 7.5 times 4 being 30, which is a day and 6 hours, which is 365 days and 6 hours. So, Zeo. Now, another point is that is 13 weeks and 7.5 hours. That's also going to be kind of relevant. So, like 7 times 10 is 70. 7 times 3 is 21. So that's 91 plus again 91 and 7.5 hours. Okay, I think with that knowledge, maybe we can proceed. So Amr Shmuel, says Shmuel, in Tkufas Nisan nofeles ella be'arba'a riv'ei hayom. Okay. Now, the sun kind of, I guess, came out for the first time, I guess. How could that be? But I guess the first time that the sun kind of was in the world was on Wednesday. Now, of course, the day starts at night. So basically Tuesday evening, if we have a perfect day to keep things easy, 6 o'clock was nightfall, midnight was at 12, 6 a.m. was the day, noon was then at 12 p.m., and then night again began at 6. So divide the day in 4, and each portion being 6 hours. So now if the sun kind of like got started for the first time on a Tuesday night at 6, now, and we're saying that the year is 365 days and 6 hours. So basically, when the sun came out, that was at Tkufat Nisan, okay? That was the first time that it came out at Tkufat Nisan, okay? So now, and that was on Tuesday night at 6. So basically, the next Tkufat Nisan, basically in a year from then, I guess the easiest way to do this would basically be to say that, well, basically it's going to be the next day, 6 hours later, right? Because so basically, because basically each season is, we said, 91 days and 7.5 hours. Now, 13 weeks goes into 91 perfectly, which means that basically each tkufa is, so like the, if we say Tkufat Nisan is going to be spring, so then Tkufat Tammuz is going to be summer. So once we get to Tkufat Tammuz, it's going to be 7.5 hours later. Then when we get to Tkufas Tishrei, it's going to be another 17.5 hours later, which is 15 hours. And then you get to Tkufas Teves, and then back to Tkufas Nisan again. So basically, at the beginning of, so each, because each season is 91 days and 7.5 hours, so basically 91 days is exactly 3 weeks. So it's going to be the same day, but 7.5 hours later. But once you have 4 Tkufot in a year, so when Tkufat Nisan rolls around again on the next year, so it's going to be 30 hours, 7.5 times 4 is 30, so it's going to be 30 hours later than it was the previous year. So that's basically one complete day of 24 hours plus another 6 hours. So if the sun came out for the first time on Tuesday night at 6 p.m., so that means that 1 year later is going to be Wednesday night at midnight. Got that? And then basically, the next year it's going to be Wednesday at 6 a.m. It's always going to be, it's going to be, 30 hours later. So if the first year it was Tuesday night at 6 p.m., so the next year it's going to be Wednesday night at midnight, then the next one, it's going to be Thursday at 6 a.m., etc. So, but the point is that it's always going to be by a 6 hour kind of increment, right? So it's always going to be either at 6 or at midnight or at 6 a.m. or at midnight. So Amar Shmuel, and Tkufas Nisan nofeles ela barba rivei hayom, by the 4 quarters, the 4 even quarters of the day, o betchilas hayom, either at the beginning of the day at 6 a.m., o betchilas halayla, or at the beginning of the night at 6 p.m., o bechatzi hayom, or halfway through the day at, what's halfway through the day? Noon, or b'chatzi halayla, or at midnight. It's always going to be even. Vein tkufas tammuz nofelas. Now, remember, so if you think now to the next tkufa, so tkufat Nisan is the first one, and tkufat tammuz is the next one. So basically, again, it's going to be 91 days and 7.5 hours later. So basically 7.5 hours. So if tkufat Nisan was on a Tuesday night at 6, so then 7.5 hours later, so 91 days is exactly 13 weeks. So basically, Tkufa Tammuz is going to be also a Tuesday night, but it's going to be 7.5 hours after that though. So it's going to be midnight, 1:30 in the morning. 7.5 hours later is 1:30 in the morning. And then again, every year it's always going to be 30 hours later. So 1 year it's going to be 1:30 a.m., then it's going to be 7:30 a.m., and then 1:30 p.m., then 7:30 p.m., whatever. So that's always going to be on the hour and a half. Right, so vein tkufas tammuz nofelas ela o ba'achaz v'mechza, either at 1:30 or b'sheva v'mechza, or at 7:30, bein bayom, bein balayla, both during the day and during the night. And then again, you push it off by an hour and a half again to get to the next thing. So vein tkufas tishrei nofelas ela o b'shalosh shos or b'teisha shos, bein bayom, bein balayla. And then you push it off by another hour and a half in order to understand tkufas teves. Vein tkufas teves nofelas o ela o be'arba v'mechza, either by 4.5 hours into the day, or be'eser v'mechza, or 10.5 hours into the day, bein bayom, bein balayla, both at day and night. So either 4.5 hours into the day, 4.5 hours into the night, 10.5 hours into the day, 10.5 hours into the night. Vein bein tkufa l'tkufa l'tishim ve'echad yom v'sheva shos v'mechza, and the amount of time between each, or basically the amount of time of each of these seasons is 91 days and 7.5 hours. Ve'en tkufa mosheches mechaverta ela chatzi shah, and each tkufa only extends into the next one a half an hour. What does that mean? So if you remember back to Kuf Chav Tes Amud Beis of Masechta Shabbos. So on Kuf Chav Tes Amud Beis of Masechta Shabbos, so we had said that basically there are 7 like constellations or something every single day that just go in this never-ending cycle. Basically, it's one in the first hour, one is on hour 1, and then hour 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then hour 8 it goes back to the first constellation again, and this is just a cycle that every 7 hours refreshes itself. So what it's saying is that based on that, well, since each kufa is 91 days and 7.5 hours, well, after 7 hours it's going to go back to the first of these constellations, but it's 7.5 hours, so it's going to go basically half an hour into that constellation. Then the next kufa is basically going to be another half an hour into that constellation. Basically, it's going to be the next constellation. Then each time it just gets pushed off, 7.5, but since every time it is after 7, it goes back to the first one, so it's really only going to be pushed off by a half a constellation every single day. Yom Kippur. V'amar Shmuel, and says Shmuel, Ein lecha tkufas Nisan shenofelas b'tzedek she'eino mishaberes ha'soilanos, that if you have a tkufas Nisan that falls out in Jupiter, basically if the molad falls out in Jupiter, that's like one of those 7 constellations that always kind of revolves around. So she'eino mishaberes ha'soilanos, it's always going to break the trees. Ve'ein lecha tkufas teves shenofelas b'tzedek she'eino miyabeshes ha'zra'im, if you have tkufas teves, that the molad of that tkufa falls out on, like when the moon comes out, if that is during the Jupiter constellation thing, so then it's going to kind of dry out all of the seeds. And that's it. And that is if the molad of the moon happened either in the constellation of the moon or the constellation of the Jupiter. All right. Very good. Alright, who's ready for more? You guys ready for more? Alright, new topic, but it doesn't get easier. Alright, Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, okay, so let's say you have a city, and the city is circular, so you want to make it square. So it's a circle, and you want to make it square, so that you can start calculating tchums and stuff. So hamrabea is ha'ir. So osa kimintav lemurubas. Okay, so you make it a square. So basically, let's say you have a circle, and the diameter of the circle is 2,000 amas. Okay, and you want to put that circle inside of a square. So basically, surrounded by a square whose sides are 2,000 amas. So a square with 2,000 amas for each side. and inside is a circle with a diameter of 2,000 amas. Okay, and then you make the tchum in a square around it. And then you make basically the tchum into a square tablet. So you have the city which is circular. It's a circle that has a diameter of 2,000. You then encompass that. Maybe, is that the word? You basically put a square around it, and the square is 2,000 amas by 2,000 amas. And then around that you measure a tchum that is going to surround this square that is 2,000 amas by 2,000 amas. So we're going to have to figure out exactly how to do that. And when he is configuring this tchum area around this city, lo yimdod me emtza keren alpayim ama. Don't measure from the corners 2,000 amas because you're going to lose out the corners. Meaning, so the question is, how do you measure this tchum? So you have this city. This city we've made into a square, and a square that is 2,000 amas by 2,000 amas. Now you want to make a tchum around it, and this tchum, of course, surrounding the city is going to be 2,000 amas. Now, if you were to start by the, let's say, northwestern point of this square city, so if you start, or maybe let's say like this, if you take from the middle point of this square and you draw a line to the northwestern point of this square, and you say, well, let's just continue extending that line in a diagonal 2,000 amas, don't do that, because you're going to be missing out, because that diagonal is actually, you're actually allowed to draw it more than 2,000 amas. And let's go on for a second. Ella, rather what you should do is maybe tavla merubas she'alpayim ama al alpayim ama umanicha bekaren balachsona nimtze seir mistaker. Okay, zeo, period. Okay, so rather what you do is, so Ella, I'm going to read that again. Rather, maybe tavla merubas shehi alpayim ama al alpayim ama. So instead of drawing a line from the northwest corner of the city on a diagonal 2,000 amas, you're going to be losing out. What you do is you take a square that is 2,000 amas by 2,000 amas, and you put that in the corner. And then you'll find that the diagonal of that square is 2,800 amas. I didn't do the math with Pythagorean's theorem. It could be this is a little bit off. I don't know. But the assumption here is that a square that is 2,000 amas by 2,000 amas will have a diagonal of 2,800 amas. So if you would only draw that diagonal 2,000 amas, you'd be losing out 800 amas. Okay, fine. Fine. Okay, so 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 that is how you're going to calculate this tchum, by basically, the tchum is always going to be 2,000 amas. So to calculate that tchum of 2,000 amas, you would take that square that is 2,000 amas by 2,000 amas, put it in the corner, and then that corner, it's going to have a diagonal of 2,800 amas. Now, nimtze sa'ir mistakeres arba meos ama lechan va'arba meos ama lechan. So now the city, if we go back to our city, right? The city was once upon a time round. Okay, it was a circle, and this circle had a diameter of 2,000 amas, which means that the radius of this circle was 1,000 amas, right? If you would be standing in the middle of this circle, and so now our circle is within a square, right? So if you were to be standing in the middle of the circle and you walk towards the northwestern point of our square, right? Meaning, so you're walking in that direction, so you would get to the end of the circle. The radius of the circle is 1,000. But if you keep on walking to get to the corner of the square that now contains the circle, it's actually going to be 1,400, right? Because we said that, remember that, right, this circle has a diameter of 2,000. And the square that we put around the circle, each side of it is 2,000 amas. Each side of the square is 2,000 amas. Now, we said that any square that is 2,000 amas, its diagonal is going to be 2,800 amas. Now, therefore, half of that is going to be 1,400 amas, which means that if you would be standing in the center of the circle and you walk towards the corner of our square, you would get to the end of the circle. The radius of the circle is 1,000. But if you keep on walking to get to the corner of the square that the circle is in, it would be from the middle to that corner would be 1400, which is half of the diagonal of the square. So basically, whereas originally the city ended after 1,000, which is the radius of the circle, now you can go to the corner, which is 1400. So you win 400 extra amas on each corner. Okay, which is what the Gemara is saying over here. Nimtza ha'ir mistakeres arba meos amas lechan v'arba meos amas lechan, which means that the city gains 400 amas in each corner. Nimtzu tchumen mistakren ches meos amos lechan u'shmona meos lechan. And as we calculated before, that if you were to just draw a straight if you just draw a line from the corner of the city in a diagonal to try to calculate the Tchumen, well then you would stop drawing the line after 2,000. But the fact of the matter is, you can really draw it you can continue on the diagonal for 2,800 amas. And therefore, you win out 800 amas in each corner. So therefore and now the Gemara says, so between the corners of the Tchumen that you get an extra 800 amas, and the corners of the city that you get an extra 400 amas, so you basically gained now an extra 1,200 amas between the tchum and the squaring of the city. So nimtzu ha'ir u'tchumen mistakun elef u'masayim l'chan ve'elef u'masayim l'chan. So basically, this city, between squaring it and making the tchum, the city gets an additional 1,200 amas in every single corner. Amar Abai says, Abai mishkachas la b'mata dahavya trei alfe atre alfe. And Abai gives us this crucial information at the very end, which is that we're talking about a city that is 2,000 amas by 2,000 amas, but that's what we were assuming the whole time. So great. That is how you do those calculations. You guys ready for more? I'll give you more. Tanya, we learn in a brisa. Amar Rabbi Eliezer Bar Yossi, says Rabbi Eliezer Bar Yossi. Okay, we learned in Masechta Shabbos and Daf Kuf Yud Ches Amud Beis. Rabbi Yossi had 5 sons. Rabbi Eliezer was one of them. Tchum Arei Levim. So the Tchum Shabbos of the Arei Levim, no, not the Tchum Shabbos, but the Tchum of the Arei Levim. So we mentioned this the other day, and I wasn't. I think maybe I mentioned that I don't remember all the details. Well, here we get a little bit more details. Actually, we get a lot more details. Well, maybe a lot more than we want, but so the Levites had 42 cities, and there was also the 6 Ari Miklat. Now this is a digression, mamish, but like I think all of the cities of the Levium were actually also Ari Miklat. So if somebody killed somebody by accident, you can actually run to any of the Levite cities. Anyway, so I think that there were 48 cities actually, including the Ari Miklat. I think I read that, but Al Kopanim, the Levites got their own cities. Now, outside of their cities, there were these migrash areas. There was 2,000 amas around each city. Now, the first 1,000 amas you had to leave empty, and the second 1,000 amas you can plant like fields and vineyards and stuff. So, Tchum Arei Levim Alpaim Ama. So the Tchum, so we have this brisa that says that the area outside of the cities of the Levites had this 2,000 amma tchum, just like by Shabbos. So Tzemeh and Elef amma migrash. So now 1,000 of those 2,000 amas was just like open area. Nimtza migrash revia. So it turns out that the migrash was a quarter, 25%. Now you're probably thinking, didn't we just say it's 50%? Yeah, we're gonna get there. V'ashar sados uchramim, and then the remaining 1,000 amas is fields and vineyards. So the first 1,000 amas is empty, and then the second 1,000 amas is fields and vineyards. Minane mile. So how do we know this? So Amar Rava says Rava Amar Kra, the pasuk says Mikira Yir v'chutza elef ama saviv. That from the wall of the Levite cities and outside of it was 1,000 amas surrounding it. Okay, so saviv amra. Saviv. Torah sabev esair be'elef. So surround the city with 1,000 amas of open area, and then the remaining 1,000 amas was fields and vineyards. Fine. Now the Gemara asks, Nimtza migrash revia? Well, we had said Nimtza migrash revia. Revia palgahave. What do you mean that this open area? Right? We said that there's 2,000 amas outside of the city. 1,000 amas of it was this open area, and then the remaining 1,000 amas of it was fields and vineyards. So the open area was not 25%, it was 50%. Right? Palgahave, it was 50%. So Amar Rava, so says Rava, Par'ad Mishocha Azberli. Par'ad Mishocha explained it to me. Mishkachasla that we could find, right, that we can say that this open area was 25% if you do the math in the following way. Bimata dahabya trei alfe atre alfe. So if you have a city that's 2,000 amas by 2,000 amas, okay? So now, tchum kamahavya. So how much is its tchum? Shitzar kranos, shitzar. Kranos kamahavyan, shitzar. So how much is the tchum? 16. How much are the corners? 16. Meaning, basically if you have a city that is square and it's 4,000 amas. So if you basically extend the tchum directly opposite its walls, so 2,000 amas. Now, it's also the city itself is 2,000 amas by 2,000 amas. So basically, directly opposite its walls, you're gonna measure 4 squares that are each 2,000 amas by 2,000 amas. So 2,000 times 2,000 is 4 million, and then there's 4 of those. So times 4 is 16 million. But now there's also the corners that you need squares for. So then you make another 4 squares for the corners. And each of those squares are 2,000 amas by 2,000 amas, which is another, so each one is 2 times 2, which is 4 million, times 4 is 16 million. So basically, so what it's saying is, let's read it inside. So, tchum kama havya, so the 4 squares directly opposite the walls, which each square is 2,000 by 2,000 amas. So when you add them all together, that's shitzar, that's 16 million amas, square amas. Kranos kamahavin, and then the 4 squares that are in each of the corners. So then that's shitzar. So that's another 16 million. So basically we have 32 million square amas. Now dal tmanya detchumen. Now you have to get rid of half of that, because half of the tchum is for. Dal tmanya detchumen v'arba dekranis. So now what you have to do is you have to subtract from that. Basically, if you take let's go weiter. Basically, if you take a look at the city itself, right? And so the city itself is 2,000 amas by 2,000 amas. But you can, let's say, divide this square city into, let's say, 4 sections, right? To 4 squares, right? Each one being 1,000 amas by 1,000 amas. So if you take a look at the migrash, right, the open area of where that open area immediately outside the city. So, directly opposite each of the walls is basically 2 of these, sections that are like 1 amma by 1,000 amas by 1,000 amas. So basically altogether that's 8, and then the corners would be another one of these squares, right? Right. So, right. Meaning, if you take the city, right, which is 2,000 amas by 2,000 amas, you can basically view it as 4 squares that are each 1,000 amas by 1,000 amas. Now, you can also view all of the squares that are surrounding the city, because at this point you basically have the city is a square that's 2,000 amas by 2,000 amas, surrounded by another 8 squares that are each 2,000 amas by 2,000 amas. Now, you could consider all of those squares to also be basically made up of 4 squares that are each 1,000 amas by 1,000 amas. So now you basically have, what's 9 times 4? You basically have 36 squares that are 36 squares of 1,000 amas by 1,000 amas. Now, so if you were to look at the squares immediately surrounding the city itself, right, the city itself being 2,000 amas by 2,000 amas, and there's like 4 of these squares, but if you would count the squares surrounding it, there would be 12 squares. There would be 2 squares, right next to each of the 4 walls. So 2 times 4 is 8, and then you'd have 1 square in each of the corners, so that's another 4, so that's 12. So what we're saying is, okay, so now back to where we were. So what we had said was we had calculated 32 million square amos, right? Because we had said that each of the squares, basically there are 8 squares. We had said that each of the squares is 2,000 amas by 2,000 amas, which is 4 million amas, and we said that basically there were 8 of these, so it was 32 million square amas. Now, we're saying that the area immediately around the city, which was that open area, was 12 million square amas, and therefore 12 million square amas is apparently 25% of 32 million, which the Gemara says isn't true. Wow. So, Dal Tmanya de Trumen, so V'arba de Kronos. So if you subtract now the 8 million, I guess, square amas of the part immediately opposite the like immediately next to the walls, and then the other 4 million from the corner squares. Well, Kama have Tresar. So that's 12. Nimta Migrash Revia, question mark, Tfei Mitlas Aninu. But that doesn't get us to a quarter, right? 12 million is not 25% of 32 million. It's more than a third, right? A third, a third of 32 million would be, I don't know, something. I don't know. Yeah, it would be something. But 12 is even more than a third. So it's clearly not a quarter. So the Gemara says, well, I see arba demata shtialayu. Okay, but you can also, right, the 32 million square amas was only for the tchum. But if you add the actual city to the mix, well, then it's going to be an additional 4 million square amas. So 36 million square amas. So how about that? But still, akati tilsa ave. But 12 million is only a third of 36 million. We need to get to 25%. So then the Gemara says, yeah, but misavart b'ribua ka'amar, bi'igula ka'amar. But then the Gemara says, wait a second, but we're not talking about a square city. Remember, since the beginning, at the top of the page, we were talking about a circular city. We were talking about a city that is circular and has a diameter of 2,000 amas. Okay. Now the migrash area for the Levium, right? This area that you weren't able to work, that you had to leave open. So that wasn't outside of the square that we put the circular city in. No, that migrash area is immediately outside the circle. So what we basically have to do right now is we have to calculate the area of this migrash that surrounds the circular city within this whole mix. Oy va'avoy. So basically what we're going to have to do, so, okay, here we go. So, wait, let me actually just pause, stop the video for a second, so just in case I mess up the calculation, it doesn't make a mess. Okay, here we go. So basically, so if you have this city, okay, and the city is, we said, 2,000, it's a circle that has a diameter of 2,000, okay? Now, it continues for another 1,000 amos after that, which is going to be the open area for the Levium, right? So basically, and that surrounds the circle. So basically, if we think about a circle whose diameter is the diameter now becomes extended by 1,000 amos in every direction. So basically, now we're talking about a circle that has a diameter of 4,000. Okay. Now, in order to encompass that, we're going to need a square whose a square that is 4,000 amos by 4,000 amos. Okay, fine. Now, the area of that square is going to be 16 million. Now, the assumption in the Gemara is that when you take a circle and put it into a square, the area of the circle is going to be 3/4 the size of the area of the square. So now the area of the square is going to be 4,000 by 4,000, which is 16 million, which means that the area of the circle that's inside of it is going to be 3/4 that, which is 12 million. Okay, fine. Now the thing is that, but so basically, so the circle that is the open area for outside the city of the Levium, so that if you view it as one circle, so it would we said it would have an area of 12 million. Fine. However, the thing is but that's surrounding a city. So we have to basically find the area of the city now and subtract it from that, because we don't want to count the city. We're only looking for the area around the city. So now the city itself, we said, was 2,000 amos diameter, and we needed a square that's 4,000 by 4,000 in order to get that in there. So now, not 4,000 by 4,000. The circle, the city had 2,000 diameter, so we need a square 2,000 by 2,000. So the area of that is 2,000 by 2,000 is 4 million, which means that the circle that's inside of it is 3 million. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. 3 million, which means that, So the city itself is 3 million square amos. Now we said that the circle of the area around the city is going to be have a total area of 12 million. So you have to basically cut out the city from that, though. So now you get 12 million minus 3 million is 9 million is the area of the migrash, of that open area. So now we have what we need. If we say that the tchum was a total of 32 million, and then we add the 4 million for the city itself, so we have 36 million. Then we have the migrash surrounding this city. Well, then and that migrash is 9 million square amos. Well, 9 million of 36 million is 25%. Well, there you go. So kama meruba yasser ala igul. How much larger is a square than a circle? Revia, 1/4. So dal revia minayu. So if you basically take like these squares and then get rid of 25%, pashlu tisha. So then you'll come out calculating that the migrash area around the city was 9 million v'tisha mitlas and v'shisa rivahave, and 9 million from 36 million is 25%. Chevra, that's what I was doing during the Yom Kippur break. I wasn't so happy about it. Chevra, that was daf 56, daf nun vav Masechta Ayruvin. I hope you enjoyed that. So basically the main sugyas were determining north, south, east, and west for the square of the tchum. Then so the Tanakama said do it based on the fact that the Taurus is the north and the Scorpion is the south. Rabbi Yossi said figure it out based on like the summer solstice, the winter solstice, and like the equinoxes. And then Rabbi Misharsha said that you can't really rely on that because in the summer solstice and the winter solstice, it doesn't actually rise all the way in the north and south and stuff. Shmuel's astrology, with the years being 365 and 6 hours, and figuring out in terms of the Tkufot what hours they start. And then the squares around the circular cities in order to figure out how much larger how to calculate these tchums. However, I hope you enjoyed that. Peace out.